Thank you for tuning in to WDRB Media, the voice of your community, giving you double the information and inspiration. You're listening to A New Day, and we're your hosts, Juicy J
and Mr. Bay. How y'all doing out there today? I'm happy today that we have our brother, finally. I've been talking about it for several weeks now, and finally got our brother Dennis Phoebe on the line. And I'm going to have him introduce himself and his organization. And talk about this race thing. Since this week especially, we got a lot of stuff going on in the news right now, as far as with Trump and Kanye West. And even today I saw in the news where there was I don't know if she's a Democratic or a Republican, but her name is Elizabeth Warren. And Trump basically called her a fake Pocahontas because he's a Caucasian woman, clearly, who has maybe like 1% of Cherokee blood or whatever they said. And her, anyways, come to find out, the DNA was a fraud. And so we want to talk about that stuff because race is a big deal in this country and the world. And before we get into it, I wanted to give some shouts out to the sponsors, which would be yours truly, Blue Crew. Man, let me back up from this mic. Blue Crew Painters, and we also got Zuri Bath and Body and Fortress Network LLC for today's show. And I want to get into it. I don't want to take up a lot of time. And Ms. J, what you got to say today?
Nothing. I think one of the things that I heard, or that I actually saw a clip on Facebook, since we're dealing with race, was another Caucasian lady was withholding from a gentleman entering his building. I don't know if you heard about that one. He was trying to go home. You know, it's one of the buildings where you have to have the key fobs to scan in. Well, she was coming out and he was going in, so he didn't use his key fob, and she was blocking the door and wouldn't allow for him to go and come into his building. So it was to the point, you know, she was asking him, what was his unit number. She didn't feel safe with him walking down the street and coming straight into the building. And so he refused to basically show her his key fob and to give him his apartment number. Right. So he goes into the building, gets on the elevator. This lady follows him, gets on the elevator with him, goes up to the floor. He actually stayed like on the 4th floor. And she literally followed him all the way to his house.
Wow.
And, and then once she realized that he really did live there, then she wanted to proceed to say, well, I just wanted to introduce myself as a neighbor. And, he actually recorded the whole thing. And so I will say one good thing about that was she actually worked for like a minority company. And once the video went viral, they did terminate her employment with them. So I think it's really interesting how a lot of the Caucasians are getting really comfortable with trying to overstep their boundaries. And so I want to touch on that as well.
Well, they've been comfortable for many thousands of years,
but
hundreds of years.
I mean, hundreds. But now I think that, it's going to a place to where, people of color can't have a cookout. People of color can't do the lemonade stands. Now, we can't live in certain buildings, so they say. And, we're living in 2018 going into 2019. So it's definitely a problem.
Well, we're going to talk about this people of color situation. But first, Dennis, introduce yourself, brother. I guess I'll introduce yourself, and then I'll kind of tell the story of how we met and, how, you inspired me with the work you're doing up there in New Jersey. Even though you're not local, the work you're doing is still, greatly needed throughout the communities, throughout the world. So introduce yourself, bro.
Amen. Peace, family. This is Dennis Phoebe. I'm the founder and CEO of West Alabama Insights LLC, which means Warrior Insights. So we're helping educational services provider whose goal is to raise social consciousness and uplift community. We provide community reintegration services and education for inmates inside of a Hudson County Correctional Facility. A curriculum that I wrote called Cultural and Social Consciousness Education, which gets people to be able to answer the basic questions in life: what, who, when, where, why am I? We also work with at-risk youth that are detained in juvenile detention centers, youth on GPS, bracelet, probation. We provide our education to them through mentoring. We also provide therapy, behavioral assistance, and school after-school programming, and now we're doing recreation. on top of trying to start the revolution, besides everything else that we're doing.
Yes.
So yeah, when we met was when we had already started pushing forward the violence interruption models here in Jersey City, because a lot of our youth were being murdered by each other. There's a big problem in Jersey City with the guns and the violence, and it's really sad to work with these kids and then go on the news and see their faces. To me, it's been one of the biggest motivators for what I do, because I do see myself in them. I'm Boricua from Brooklyn, New York. I grew up in the hood. I know the deal. But I was also fortunate to get my education and never stop opening my mind and expanding my mind to create independence for myself, my family, and my community.
Yes, man. Well, we did meet that day over on the projects, as they call them, up in Jersey City. And I think we're getting ready to come up on a break. But when we come back, we could talk a little bit about our encounter, what my impression is when we first met. I'm just, it's good to know brothers like you out there in the world doing good works, man. So I want to commend you, and anything that we can do, man, to support what you're doing, you know what I'm saying, just let us know. So that being said, it's time to go pay some bills.
Listen to a little music. You're tuned in to WDRB Media, the voice of your community, giving you double the information and inspiration. Don't go anywhere, because we're going to be right back.